Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we got Mark coming in from Jersey and Jan from Washington. That's awesome. And Setsuko from Tokyo. That is great.
Do you want
Welcome,
me to,
everybody.
should I be on mute for this part, you said?
Yeah, if you could, that'd be good. And that way they'll go to my screen and we'll get started. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on virtual day trip to wine country. I'm Sam Kimball from Crush Wine Experiences. And today we are going to South Africa. This will be our first time ever doing South Africa on this broadcast. And specifically, we are going to the Elgin Valley, which is a large, very lush area of land. It's in between two different mountain ranges. It's kind of encircled actually by mountains. And it's in the Overberg region of South Africa. It's about 70 miles southeast of Cape Town. And it's just beyond the Hottentots and the Hollands Mountains. And I'm going to put up in my background here a couple of maps because it's really interesting to see where this location of this winery is. Not only that, the winery itself is amazing. So if we go kind of wide angle and take a look at where we are in the world, there we are at the very southern tip of the African continent in South Africa, 70 miles southeast of Cape Town, South Africa. And then if you zoom into the actual winery in the Elgin Valley, you can see behind me here, there's a little red circle. Somebody drew with a red Sharpie on the map there. That is the valley, which is totally surrounded by mountains. And you can't see it in some of the photographs that we have, but it's really quite something. The mountains surround the valley, and the valley itself is an agricultural abundant, rich place with lots of different things, and not just grapevines, but apples and other agriculture and produce growing there. So a really neat place. This is another shot of the valley. You can kind of see the mountains in the background there. There are quite a few lakes in the Elgin Valley as well. And over the years, it's developed into a large, thriving wine industry. And the wines from the Elgin Valley in South Africa have won several international awards. It's really on the international stage as a wine growing region. It's the coolest climate in South Africa for wine growing. And other, geographic features are, you saw how close it is to the Atlantic Ocean. So it's got ocean breeze, and it also has a little bit of altitude as well. Cold temperatures and plenty of rain in the winter mean that the Elgin Valley has the kind of conditions that are markedly different from other South African wine growing areas. And the varietals and the wine grapes that are growing there are a lot of Sauvignon Blanc, quite a lot of amazing Pinot Noir. You can imagine with that ocean breeze and the cooling effect at night, that's something that Pinot Noir grapes really need and appreciate. And at the end of the day, the Lothian Vineyards is a craft wine producer. They are not a huge producer. It's not a factory of wine. It's quality over quantity. And then perhaps one of the most interesting details about the winery, Lothian Vineyards, is that the winemaker, Richard Kershaw, is a master of wine. For those of you who know the wine world and know about masters of wine, there are only 269 masters of wine in the world right now. So Richard Kershaw is quite an accomplished professional when it comes to wine. And here's a really interesting fact. He is one of only 10 masters of wine in the world who actually is also a winemaker. When you try these wines, you will see that the craft and the expertise and Richard's knowledge really comes through in the product. Their calling card at Lothian Vineyards is elegance and refined wines. A fun fact about the Elgin Valley, where they're situated, is it produces 60% of all the apples grown in South Africa. So major agricultural region. To learn all about Lothian Vineyards, you can go to lothianvineyards.com. I will put that into the chat right now in case you're curious and want to browse while we're chatting tonight. But a really interesting place, and we've got an amazing guest this evening that I'm really excited about having on this broadcast. He's somebody I've worked with for a number of years. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. Stop us, interrupt us, interject with questions, with comments. And also, if you haven't already, I see some regulars. I see some new faces. John, Daniela, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's great to see where everyone's located. I believe we have a pretty diverse geography represented tonight: Long Island, Washington State, New Jersey, and Tokyo, Japan. Setsuko, great to see you. All right, we will jump right into it. We have worked at Crush Wine XP with tonight's guest over the years at our grand tasting events in New York City and beyond. And he is an extremely knowledgeable and thoughtful wine professional who imports wines, not only from South Africa, but also from Portugal and Greece. So it is with great pleasure today that I host the owner of River Horse Wine Imports and a fellow New York metro area resident, Tasso Fragopoulos. Welcome, Tasso. It is great having you on the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. Where does this broadcast find you exactly this evening?
In Nassau County. Yeah.
In Nassau County, Long Island, the home of
yes.
abundant drive time traffic.
Yeah, I came in from the city. I kept on checking the GPS while I was going from appointment to appointment. Said I had plenty of time to make it. And then the traffic Waze just kept on saying, no, it's 15 minutes later. Now it's 20 minutes. And so I just made it in at like 6:55. So.
Well, it's great that you're here, and I'm sure you're glad to be home after another adventure on the Long Island Expressway. So tell us a little bit more about Lothian Vineyards. This is a producer that you've worked with for a few years. It's not one that is widely known by wine enthusiasts like the people hanging out with us tonight.
Right.
What's Lothian all about in your view?
I mean, I think you covered most of it, but I will say that Gavin and Ewan, who are the brothers that are the owners of Lothian Vineyards, are really hands-on, super active. Ewan lives in South Africa, and handles the day-to-day operations, where his brother Gavin lives in London. He's in finance. What can I say? I mean, it started off after World War II, where their grandmother emigrated to South Africa from Scotland as a single mother. The rosé Isabel is in her namesake. She worked on a farm in South Africa, remarried, being a widow. Homage to those before us, right?
Yeah, very, very cool. So and what about Richard Kershaw? I mean, we know he's a master of wine. What's his story?
Not only is he a master of wine, but the other important tidbit is that he specializes in cool climate wines.
Yep.
It's not enough to just be an expert in enology or viticulture, because that's so diverse, right? It's like grapes don't grow the same way in cool climates as they're going to in somewhere like Argentina or Chile, where you're going to have, it's more tropical, there's more heat. Or I'm thinking now Greece, right? Like on the islands of Greece, where the weather is more consistent or hotter. So Richard Kershaw's hallmark is, in addition to being a master of wine, is that he's an expert in cool climate wines. And as you mentioned, Elgin has one of the coolest climates, if not the coolest, in South Africa.
How close, we're looking at that tighter shot, that close-up map.
Mm-hmm.
How close is the valley, which is circled in red there, actually to the ocean?
That's a good question. I want to say I read somewhere that it's about 20 kilometers. So
it's pretty close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's got to be an interesting microclimate, because you can see there's mountains right by the sea, which the ocean air has to actually go over those before it gets to the valley. Yeah.
And as you were mentioning about the biodiversity, I had read somewhere that Elgin, in terms of fauna, plant life, Elgin has one of the most diverse, is one of the most diverse regions in the world.
Interesting. Yeah, for just flora and fauna.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and South Africa itself is an incredible ecosystem and biodiversity all the way around. What are the how did you get involved with Lothian? I mean, well, let me back up. How did you get started in the wine business?
So we're talking over a decade ago. I had a very good friend that owned a couple of high-end restaurants, one on the Upper East Side, one in the Hamptons, and then he eventually opened up his third in Roslyn. They were all called Trata. Some people on the Zoom call might be familiar with them. He was looking for a private label, and I thought it was such a great idea for a high-end restaurant to bottle wines under their label, right? Because you go to a high-end restaurant, you're going to trust that, just like you trust that the food is going to be spot on, I would think that you trust that the wine that they select to put their name on is going to be spot on. So I found a winery in Greece, being that it was a Greek restaurant, that was willing to do this private label. We shipped over some samples. They chose 3 wines from the winery in Santorini, gave me this tremendous order, and we kind of just took it from there. But South Africa is the first region I ever imported from that it's not a private label. So it's the winery's wine that I'm bringing in. Yeah.
And you're bringing it in. And now, of course, years later, you do that across South Africa, Greece. You have a number of really interesting wine imports or selections that you bring in from Greece, from multiple different wineries and producers.
Yeah.
And then also Portugal.
Yeah, and California. Not
California.
But domestically, California.
You import those into New York State.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
But to answer your other question about Lothian, so Lothian found me. I feel that even though I'm a boutique importer, through the years I've really built up my name, especially with South African wines and Greek wines, like you mentioned. And Lothian had heard about me. We had a conversation, and I tasted their wines, and I was floored. I was like, I'd be more than happy to represent your wines.
Well, it's interesting. I have watched people react to these wines at grand tastings. Mm-hmm. I enjoy them tremendously myself. Mm-hmm. In my wine retail store, I see people come back and get and ask for that second or third purchase or a half case of these wines, especially the Pinot Noir and the Rosé. People are not as knowledgeable about the late harvest, the dessert wine, but
Mhm.
it's also fabulous. So they found you. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What are the types of wines that you generally look for? I mean, did they check off a box with you when they came and said, well, here's the types of wines, and you tried them? Are you looking for a certain type or style of wine when you bring it in?
No, because I feel that if I look for a specific type or style, that would really pigeonhole me into, then all my wines might kind of taste the same. So the wine just has to speak to me, as corny as that might sound, but
Yeah, yeah,
it really, the number one thing I look for is character. It can't be something where I feel was manufactured and kind of just has like a stamp put to it. It just has to be expressive. It has to be like, the way people are, right? We're all unique and we're all different. We all have different characteristics. I just love wines that have character, is the
yeah.
bottom line.
Well, and pretty much every producer that you work with is, small production. I mean, I don't know how
Yeah.
many cases Lothian makes a year, but it's not a large number.
I mean,
Um,
maybe per wine, like 1,500 cases with 2,000, which is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket.
right,
It's really,
right.
yeah.
Well, and Josh Sellers' Cabernet Sauvignon is 1 million, 2
Yeah,
million cases.
that's that. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's a large number. All right. So last question, and then let's taste these wines. What, in your opinion, makes a great wine? I mean, you just talked about character, but
Yeah.
and I have one other thing I want to touch on, which is I've got an idea what I want to do with these wines this fall. But just beyond character, are there certain things that you look for beyond that in terms of specific
I
characteristics?
I think that the wine should represent where it comes from, and I say that in all seriousness because for many years, and it still goes on today, but I'll never say names because I'm not here to disparage anybody, any other wine producers, but there are wineries in regions around the world that try to mimic France or try to mimic California. And to me, if you're not a winery from France or you're not from California, you shouldn't try to imitate that style. You should be proud of the region that your wine comes from. With South Africa, a lot of times people get those earthy notes, right? Some smoke. And if that's not your thing, then that's fine, but most or many South African wines are going to have that element because
Mhm.
that's the terroir in South Africa.
Right. Well, I think I would sum that up by saying place and authenticity.
Yeah. So
It's
if I'm rambling, I'm sorry.
no, I think that's well, listen, I kind of came out of left field with that question. So I have an idea for these three wines because I'm a fan of all three. I know them really well. I buy them, I drink them at home.
Mhm.
But we're about 7 weeks from Thanksgiving.
Mm.
I think these three wines are actually a great Thanksgiving combination in the sense that, there's a rosé, which is terrific with the early part of the meal or
Yeah.
appetizers or
Yeah.
aperitif. The Pinot Noir is got a lot of body. It's got a lot of horsepower for Pinot Noir, a lot of character.
Yeah.
What goes great, and you don't want anything. You don't want a red wine that's too huge for the turkey and etc.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's dessert at Thanksgiving, and the late harvest
Yeah.
is a beautiful dessert wine. So I
Yeah.
just want to. I didn't tell you about this. I'm surprising you once again with it, but I think these are interesting selections. This is a nice bundle for a Thanksgiving wine pick this year. So
Well, all right. So I'm going to add to that. the Pinot Noir is by far my top selling red, and it has been for years, even though it's not inexpensive. It's a little above entry level.
Mhm.
And I have had most of my Pinot Noir sales during Thanksgiving, and I've done most of my in-store tastings with the Pinot Noir around Thanksgiving just for that reason. Yeah, it's light, it's refreshing, it's got good acidity. Um, I think I think you're spot on. I mean, with a cheese with cheeses before the meal gets started, as people are trickling in,
Yep.
have it nice and cold. Yeah, even some charcuterie too.
Mhm.
You know.
Mark just mentioned Morvedra, so do you think it has a little of the quality of a Bandol in Provence?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, of
No,
course.
it's quite delicious. So it's really this, like other rosés, also is one that you can just take to the beach or take to the
Oh yeah,
park or a picnic and enjoy.
yeah.
Um, I like drinking rosé all year round. I'm not just a
Oh yeah,
summer rosé drinker.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
I think people have gotten away from that too,
I think
worrying,
so.
you know.
I think so. It's very food friendly.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't I have rosé in February if I'm having a light pasta dish? Why am I'm not going to look for a Barolo, right? If I'm having you know, pasta with sautéed garlic and broccoli rabe, right?
Exactly. Well, so next time you come over, I'll make you a shrimp pasta dish. Very
Mm,
light. It's got a little white wine
yeah.
and butter sauce, and it's delicious. And this rosé would be the perfect complement for that. So, all right. So let's move on to the Lothian Pinot Noir,
Okay.
2019. This is the sort of famous. This is the hit. So what are the tasting notes on this?
So I typically get rose petals. I get like some I get cherry, but not super ripe cherry. I get a little hint of cocoa. And then with this one, I definitely get a little, hint of tobacco or earth, depending on, what you're leaning towards, what your palate is leaning towards. But yeah, I get that little bit of earth at the end.
Yeah, no, it's really nice.
Yeah, you can see by the color, it's lighter, right? You can
Mhm.
kind of see through it. Um, Again, perfect for Thanksgiving. This is a red wine that you could chill a little bit.
Mhm.
You want to try to get it to 55. Yeah, it's what we call a chillable red, and we sell a lot of it during the summer too because it's not super big.
Yeah, I might for Thanksgiving. This is a great one. I might even do in between this and the dessert course. I might then throw in a really nice Cabernet Sauvignon
Yeah,
or a
absolutely.
Zinfandel.
Yeah.
Um, and
You-
one of your other wineries you work with makes a terrific South African Cabernet Sauvignon, but it's from Stellenbosch. Yeah.
It's from Stellenbosch. Yeah, it's called Ella, Ella. It's a single vineyard. Um, they only make about 3 barrels a year. I don't know if you guys, I think Evan told me you guys are sold out, and I don't have any more in stock.
They only make 3 barrels of the Ella a year.
Yeah, approximately three
Wow.
barrels. Yeah.
Wow.
And
All I know is
yeah,
when I've had it at our grand tasting events where you and River Horse have participated, and there's an extra bottle and I bring it home. Every time I open up that Ella Cabernet Sauvignon from South Africa, I'm blown away. It's beyond delicious. It's an oh my God, this is so good
yeah.
wine.
Ella named after their granddaughter, their first grandchild. And I tell everybody, if it had a Napa Valley label on it, right, or if it came from a certain region of Bordeaux where Cab is predominantly grown, it would be $100 bottle of wine, but it retails in the low to mid 30s.
Yep.
And for what you get, it's an absolute steal. That spent extensive time in oak, I think about 2 years. And it's
Yeah.
always neutral oak, not to overpower the grape.
I don't think it's a controversial statement, Tasso, to say that the wines of South Africa are underrepresented in the US.
Yeah.
Given how spectacular they are, so many of them.
Yeah.
It is, it's a shame we don't see more of them.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's something that Wines of South Africa is trying to address, the association of all the wineries in South Africa.
Yep.
But it's very rare that I have one of your selections where I'm not blown away. And there are others where you just say, wow, why don't we see more of this region in the US? California dominates our wine drinking, California and France. But I mean, California produces, I think the number is, it produces 90-something% of all the wine made in the US.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a gigantic number. Yeah. So
yeah, incredible.
All right, let's move on to the last wine, which is the Lothian Noble Late Harvest.
Yep.
I love this. I don't know if anybody watching, if you hit the chat and let us know if you are a fan of, or if you've had Chateau d'Yquem, which is a famous, the most famous French dessert wine. It's also insanely expensive. I think
it is.
A bottle of Chateau d'Yquem, the small bottle, the 375 milliliters, is probably $500.
Yeah.
And a full bottle is $1,000. Mark says I can't afford it. Mark, neither can I, but I have some Wall Street finance friends who have it occasionally. So I like it. But I will tell you that this late harvest, Lothian Noble Late Harvest, is right up there in my book, in my experience, with Chateau d'Yquem. In terms of just the beautiful quality, it tastes like honey. It's just absolutely spectacular.
Well, so I mean, I'm saying what buyers have told me, and when I say buyers, I mean over a dozen buyers have told me that it drinks like a Sauterne, but it's a fraction of the price.
Check the inventory. We have 7 bottles of this.
Okay.
So we have more than you.
You have more than me. Yeah. Oh, I'm happy that it's sold so well for me, because again, dessert wine is another thing similar to what we were talking about with rosé, how people feel like you can only have it at certain times of the year. But I mean, if you're having cheese, I mean, pair this with cheese. You don't have, maybe you don't want cheesecake, but you might want,
It's so good with these cheeses I'm having tonight. And by the way, it is the pairing. I talk in terms of pairing value. The pairing value of this wine is off the charts. It is pure magic when it's paired with just the right thing. And so I love it for that. I'm a little bummed to hear there's only 6 left in the warehouse.
Well, the 18 is coming. It's going to be a couple of months, but the 18 is on its way.
All right. Well, we'll talk offline about that. Well, so cool to hear about these wines from you, Tasso. Let me just put up on screen in case anybody is interested. I'll put up the lineup from tonight. And if you're interested in getting these wines, we have $12.50 flat rate shipping in the NYC metro area. But let me share this screen. If you're curious, come on over to northforkcraftwines.com. And those are the 3 wines that we profiled tonight. I think that the rosé is very affordably priced. And if you taste the Pinot Noir and that late harvest dessert wine, the prices here will shock you as how at how accessible they are.
Well,
So
the Pinot Noir drinks like an expensive Burgundy. I mean, that's
yes,
just the truth
yes,
of the matter. It drinks like a $40 to $50 Burgundy.
yep.
Um, you know, and but I mean, I'd be happy to field any questions. I mean, these are also available at restaurants on Long Island near Sam's store, the Frisky Oyster, and Noah's. They both carry the late harvest Viognier. Yeah, places in St. James like Mosaic have the Pinot Noir and the Viognier, the late harvest. You know, we've done really well with the wines, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Absolutely. Well, we have a very enthusiastic and knowledgeable group, and for that I am extremely grateful. And I want to thank you, Tasso, for doing this and hanging with us. It's always good to see you. I'm very fortunate because I get to see you occasionally in person as well.
Yeah.
And we love the wines, and hopefully we've given some people tonight some food for thought for some selections going into the holiday season. And we will keep it going. Speaking of which, we will be back. We're on a little bit of a break because we've got some big grand tasting events coming up in New York City, Brooklyn Crush on October 22nd, and the New York City Wine and Food Festival on November 5 in Manhattan. But November 16th, we will be back with another really knowledgeable and interesting importer who brings in only wines from Italy, which is, by the way, many of you know, the #1 wine producer in the world is the sovereign nation of Italy. And so we'll be profiling several really interesting selections and grape varietals for that session on November 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I want to thank you again, Tasso. Great seeing you, and thank you everybody for tuning in. It's always awesome to hang out. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'll put in my email address in the chat here, and be in touch. Otherwise, if you're around on November 16th, tune in again.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate it. Have a great night. It's a little early, but I guess happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, early happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Tasso. Thanks, everybody. Be safe.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye now.